I went to her office to give her a surprise, but she was busy with other men. This shocked me very much. They were behaving as if they knew one another for a long time. And this was not just friendship. Listen my story with heavy heart and comment from where you are watching my video, and stay with me till end, as this story will touch your heart for sure. That morning, I wanted to surprise her. A harmless, romantic idea, the kind people in love have. She had a meeting at work, and I thought, why not? A simple gesture. Tulips, her favorite, wrapped in soft brown paper still damp from the rain. The petals smelled faintly of morning dew and something sweeter, something that reminded me of her perfume. I parked near the glass building she worked in, nerves humming, heart stupidly excited. I even practiced what I'd say. Just thought I'd make your morning better. Maybe. Something small, casual, but secretly overflowing with love. The lobby was bright, all chrome and glass, sterile, almost intimidating. I remember the sound of my shoes echoing on the marble floor, each step full of purpose I didn't yet know was misplaced. The receptionist smiled when I said her name. "I'm here to surprise my wife," I told her. I even laughed. I remember that laugh. Too bright, too trusting. Then she frowned. "Oh," she said, hesitating. She's not here." I blinked. "She called in sick." The receptionist's voice lowered, cautious. "No, sir. Her husband just picked her up." Her husband. The word didn't land at first. It hovered in the air like smoke. Unreal, impossible, toxic. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I just stood there, flowers in hand, heartbeat fading into static. "Her husband?" I repeated. The sound of it tasted wrong. "Bitter?" "Yes, he comes by sometimes," the woman said, her eyes darting away like she wished she could take it back. I nodded, pretending to understand. My body moved before my mind did. I thanked her. I smiled. I even said, "Have a nice day." Then I walked out, calm on the outside, detonating on the inside. Outside, the world looked the same. The sky still gray, cars still passing, people still talking, but everything had shifted. Reality itself felt misaligned. I stood by my car, the tulips trembling in my hand. The rain had started again, small drops hitting the paper, darkening it like blood blooming through fabric. Her husband. The phrase kept echoing in my head, over and over, louder each time until it became unbearable. The woman I loved, my wife, had another life, another man, another version of herself that I'd never met. It's strange how silence can scream. The air felt colder, sharper, the way it does after something irreversible happens. I looked down at the flowers. Their stems had started to bend, petals drooping, fragile. Just like me, I thought. Beautiful ones. Pointless now. My hands were shaking, not from anger, not yet, but disbelief. My brain kept replaying her face, her voice, the way she said, "You're my everything," over and over like a broken record. But that's the thing about lies. They sound sweetest when you don't know they're poison. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at the building that suddenly felt like a crime scene. Eventually, I dropped the flowers into a nearby bin. I watched them fall, slowly, delicately, like they were surrendering to gravity. That was the last romantic thing I ever did. As I walked back to my car, I told myself something simple, something cold enough to hold me together. This isn't heartbreak. This is the beginning of an investigation, because love may blind you, but betrayal gives you perfect vision, and I was done being blind. I drove without knowing where I was going. The road blurred. My thoughts didn't. Every turn of the wheel felt mechanical. my body moving while my mind rewound the morning like a film I couldn't stop watching. Her husband. The words echoed with a rhythm that matched the wipers scraping against the windshield. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Eyes wide, hollow, searching. I didn't recognize the man staring back. He looked like someone who'd been erased midlife. I pulled over near a small cafe, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to breathe. Inside, the place smelled of burnt espresso and wet coats. I sat by the window, hands clasped tight, staring through the glass. Everything outside moved. People, cars, clouds. But my world had stopped. My phone buzzed. Her name flashed across the screen. "Hey, love," her message read. "Long morning. Talk soon." Talk soon. I stared at those words until they lost meaning. Then I laughed, quietly at first, then harder, until the woman at the next table turned to look. I wiped my face, realizing the laugh had turned into a sound I didn't recognize. That's when the first thought came, who is he? Not in the jealous sense, but the analytical one. The investigator inside me had started to wake up. She had a husband. But then who was I? A side story? A backup plan? A weekend version of her truth? I needed to know. Not because I wanted her back, but because I needed the story to make sense. I needed the narrative straightened out before it consumed me. So I started with what I had. Her routine. Her patterns. I remembered her telling me she worked extra hours every Wednesday. That's when she couldn't answer calls. I finished my coffee, bitter and cold, and opened her social media. Her photos, smiles, flowers, dinners suddenly looked staged. Every caption felt written for someone else. I scrolled deeper until I found a tag I hadn't noticed before. A man's name? Harris? A face beside hers, blurred in the background of a company event photo. He looked normal, kind even. Average height, calm eyes, a man you wouldn't notice twice. But it was the way she leaned slightly toward him, the body language, unconscious, intimate, that hit hardest. I clicked through his profile. Married. No public posts. A ring on his finger in every photo. My stomach twisted. That's when it became real. She wasn't mine to lose. I'd been borrowing someone else's wife without knowing. The coffee turned to acid in my throat. I walked out of the cafe, rain still falling, the world dimming around the edges. I wanted to confront her, storm into her office, shout, demand. Why? But the rational part of me, the part she'd unknowingly created, stopped me. Not yet. No. First I'd watch, learn, collect evidence like she was the case, and I was the detective she didn't know she had. That night, I couldn't sleep. The apartment was too quiet, too honest. The bed felt empty even though she'd been there just a day ago. Her perfume still lingered on the pillow. Jasmine and guilt. I stared at the ceiling and began to piece things together. Dates, excuses, delays. The puzzle was forming, ugly but coherent. Every lie she'd ever told was a breadcrumb leading to this truth. My phone buzzed again around midnight. Another message. "Good night, love. Wish you were here," I almost replied. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. But then I stopped. What could I say? "Good night, Mrs. Whoever you really are"? Instead, I took a screenshot. Proof. It was strange, how grief morphed into method. The pain didn't fade, it simply changed shape. I started taking notes. Her schedule, her tone, even her silences. Because sometimes silence says more than words ever could. The next morning, she called me. Her voice was soft, the same warmth I used to crave. "I missed you," she said. I closed my eyes, listening, imagining her saying those same words to him. Maybe the tone was different. Maybe it wasn't. "I missed you too," I said. The lie slid off my tongue easily. Too easily. As I hung up, I realized I'd crossed a line. Not into hatred, but into strategy. And that was the first time I admitted it out loud, whispering into the empty room like a secret prayer. This isn't heartbreak. I looked at the mirror, at the man I no longer recognized, and finished the thought. This is an investigation. Because love may blind you, but betrayal? Betrayal gives you perfect sight. And I was ready to see everything. The days after that were strange, like living inside an echo of my own life. Everything looked the same but sounded off, as if reality had been slightly detuned. Her voice still filled the phone speaker, soft and familiar, but every word carried a second meaning now. Every "I love you" was a question I didn't answer aloud. She thought nothing had changed. She didn't know that every text she sent, every call she made, every casual "I'm leaving work now" went straight into a digital folder I'd started labeling evidence. The betrayal itself wasn't the worst part. It was the ease with which she lied, the fluency of it. She didn't hesitate, didn't pause, didn't flinch. That kind of confidence doesn't come from practice. It comes from living two lives long enough that both feel real. I began driving past her office sometimes, just to see, just to know. Some nights her car wasn't there. Other times it was parked beside his. Once I saw them, or maybe I just saw their shadows, standing close near the entrance, laughing softly in the rain. The image burned itself into me like a scar. I didn't cry. I just sat there, parked across the street, the engine off, listening to my own pulse pound in the silence. You'd think I'd feel powerless in that moment, but I didn't. I felt awake, sharper than I'd ever been, like the pain had stripped away every illusion and left only clarity. That's when I began to understand something cruel but true. Love doesn't make you weak. Lies do. And once you stop believing them, the weakness dies too. So I waited, patiently. I studied her movements like a pattern. When she left home, when she turned her phone off, when she texted less, there was a rhythm to her deceit, a pulse. I learned to read it like music. She'd always underestimated me, thought I was the kind man who'd forgive anything if it was wrapped in enough affection. But forgiveness is just a word for people who can't handle the truth. I could. I was handling it better than she ever would. One evening, she called while I was parked outside her work. I could see the office lights off through the glass. "Hey," she said, her voice warm. "Still at your desk?" "Yeah," I lied. "You?" Still at mine. Long night ahead. Her reflection appeared in the glass door, walking arm in arm with him. I watched her lie in real time, her lips moving around the word mine while she stood next to someone else's. I didn't speak. I let her talk, filling the silence with falsehoods. My phone recorded every word. When she hung up, I sat there for a long time, watching them walk to his car. She rested her head on his shoulder. He opened the door for her, gentlemanly, ordinary, and that ordinary hurt the most. The truth wasn't cinematic. It wasn't grand or poetic. It was simple. She just didn't love me anymore, and she didn't have the courage to say it. But courage was something I still had. That night, I drove home and laid out everything I'd collected. Messages, screenshots, timestamps. I printed them, one by one, the hum of the printer filling the room. The papers covered the table like a map of deceit. At the center of it all was a photo, the one from her company event, her leaning toward him, smiling, happy. I stared at it until the edges blurred. Then I whispered something I hadn't said before. "You chose this." Not a question, a statement, because choice is what defines betrayal. And that meant she'd earned what was coming next. The plan came to me slowly. naturally, like it had always been waiting in the back of my mind. I didn't want to destroy her. Not yet. I just wanted her to see herself, to feel the weight of what she'd done. So I began writing a letter. Not angry, not cruel, just honest. A confession of my own, disguised as hers. I wrote it in her voice, word for word, pulling sentences straight from her texts and messages. By the time I finished, it read like an apology she'd never have the courage to write. I folded it neatly, placed it in an envelope, and addressed it to her workplace. Attention to the receptionist. The same woman who'd told me about her husband. The next morning, I watched the mail truck drive away. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. I didn't do it out of hatred. I did it for balance, for truth, for closure. People like to believe that revenge is a fire. It's not. It's ice. Slow, quiet, precise. That night, she called again. I answered. Her voice was shaking. "Someone sent a letter to my office," she whispered. I said nothing. "Do you know anything about it?" Silence. "Please," she said softly. "Just tell me if it was you." I exhaled slowly. "Why?" "Because I'm scared." I smiled to myself, not out of cruelty, but recognition. Fear. That was new for her. Fear meant she finally understood that actions have eyes. "I thought you were working late," I said calmly, echoing her old lie. The silence that followed was heavy, alive. For the first time, she didn't have words. When she finally hung up, I sat there in the dark, staring at the reflection of my phone screen. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel guilt. Just a quiet, cold kind of peace. Because something inside me had finally settled. I no longer needed to know how deep her lies went. I'd already reached the bottom. And from that depth, a different version of me began to rise. The one who no longer chased truth. The one who delivered it. You ever realize you've been living inside someone else's fiction? That's what it felt like when I started digging. Like waking up halfway through a movie, only to realize you're not the main character. You're the extra. You're the lie. Every message, every receipt, every meeting that ran late. They all started whispering the same thing once I looked close enough. The truth doesn't shout. It creeps in softly, like smoke seeping through cracks you didn't know existed. It began with her phone. I never touched it while she was around. She was too careful, always face down, screen locked, silence mode on. But one night, she fell asleep with it, still glowing beside her. I stared at the light for a long time. It blinked once, twice. A message from someone named H. My chest tightened. I should have looked away. I didn't. The messages weren't poetic or incriminating, just ordinary words that carried extraordinary weight once you saw them in the wrong context. Got home safe. Tomorrow night? Missed you today. Missed you today. That's all it took for the floor beneath my life to shift again. I started small. Phone logs, late-night calls, calendar entries that didn't match her stories. Then credit card statements, restaurants we'd never gone to, hotels I'd never heard of. There was a pattern forming, invisible but undeniable, like threads pulling her farther from me and closer to the truth I hadn't yet faced. Then came the deleted photos, the ones she thought were gone. Not enough to convict her, but too much to ignore. A blurred arm over her shoulder, a second wine glass reflected in a mirror, the edge of a man's hand, wearing a ring. A ring. My ring. Or something too close to it. That's when I realized the scope of it. She didn't just lie to me, she duplicated me. There was another life, another address, another version of us running parallel somewhere else. And in that world, she belonged to someone else entirely. I began watching them, not out of jealousy, but curiosity, a need to understand how deeply she'd rewritten the story of us. From my car, parked a few streets away, I'd watch her leave work, sometimes alone, sometimes not. The man always arrived early, never late. He looked ordinary, unremarkable, a man whose face you'd forget if you passed him on the street. But she looked at him differently. It wasn't the way lovers look, not exactly. It was softer, more certain, like she recognized him as something permanent. That was the knife, not the betrayal itself, but how natural it looked. I wasn't jealous. I was fascinated. Because betrayal isn't just about love. It's about performance. And I wanted to see who she was when she thought I didn't exist. So I followed them. Once to a restaurant, the kind we used to go to on anniversaries. Once to a small bookstore where she used to drag me, saying she loved the smell of old paper. She laughed there, with him. The same laugh that once made me feel chosen. I stayed far enough not to be seen, close enough to hear the rhythm of her voice. I took notes. Times, places, words. Every small inconsistency became a piece of the puzzle. You'd think this kind of obsession would make me hate her. It didn't. It made me calm, detached. Watching her lie was like studying a storm from behind. Glass. You admire its power because it can't touch you anymore. Every night, I wrote it all down. I built a map of deceit, line by line, until it filled an entire notebook. And with every discovery, my pain began to evolve. From heartbreak to strategy. Because I realized something she hadn't yet. This wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about understanding how far she'd fallen and how far I was willing to go to meet her there. I started calling him the stranger. It made the situation easier to digest, less human, more symbolic. Because the truth was, if I admitted he was real, if I said his name out loud, it meant my marriage existed twice, and only one version included me. I began to notice things I shouldn't have known. His car, a silver sedan with a dent on the left door. His schedule, 9 to 6, sometimes later. He always picked her up on Fridays. She always wore her hair differently those nights. Her perfume, heavier, her tone lighter when she'd call me and say, "I'm exhausted, I'll crash early." Crash early. That phrase became a code in my head. Every time she said it, I'd write it down. The page in my notebook filled quickly, the ink digging deeper into the paper with every repetition. It wasn't madness. It was record-keeping. Documentation of her fiction. The thing is, when someone lies to you long enough, you start to crave the truth like oxygen, even when you know it'll burn going in. So I followed them again. One Thursday night. Rain falling in sheets. The kind that blurs everything into a watercolor of headlights and silhouettes. I parked 2 streets down from her office, the wipers ticking in slow rhythm with my pulse. At 8:47 p.m., they appeared. Her red umbrella glowing under a streetlight, his hand brushing her shoulder as they hurried to the car. The gesture was small, ordinary, but it carried weight, familiarity, ownership. She used to flinch when I touched her like that. Now she leaned into him. I gripped the steering wheel, not from anger, but restraint. The kind of restraint that feels holy. I let them drive off before following, keeping my headlights low. I told myself I wasn't stalking. I was investigating a crime scene that just happened to still be breathing. They stopped at a cafe, the same one we'd gone to on our first anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched them through, the rain-specked glass, their reflections distorted, almost surreal. They looked like a painting of someone else's happiness. He reached across the table, touched her hand. She smiled, not guilty, not scared, just content. That was when I realized she wasn't living a double life out of fear. She was living it out of comfort. She wanted both worlds, mine for safety, his for escape. And somehow, she thought she could keep balancing between them forever. When they left, I didn't follow. I stayed. Ordered black coffee, I didn't drink. I just needed to sit in the same place they'd sat, breathe the same air, let the betrayal soak into my skin until it felt familiar. Because I was done reacting. I was learning. And what I learned that night was simple. Love makes you vulnerable, but knowledge makes you dangerous. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. My body felt heavier, but my mind was clear, frighteningly clear. I looked around my home, realizing it no longer belonged to me. Every object, every photo, every faint trace of her perfume felt like evidence in a case that had already been. I walked into the kitchen, opened her drawer, and found what I knew would be there. Receipts, old appointment slips, a second phone charger. I took a deep breath and reached into the back. My fingers brushed something smooth, cold. A key. Not to this house. It was small, brass, slightly worn, the kind used for apartments. My heart didn't race. It slowed. The key meant there was a door somewhere, a place where she was free of me, where her lies lived comfortably. I placed it on the table and stared at it under the morning light. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the bridge between knowledge and action. But what kind of man crosses that bridge? A fool? A monster? Or just a husband who refuses to stay blind? Maybe all three. Later that day, she called. Her voice was calm, sweet, practiced. "I'm thinking of taking a short trip," she said. "Just me. Clear my head." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "You should," I replied. "You deserve some clarity," she hesitated. "You sound different." "I am," I said quietly. And she laughed. That same easy laugh she used on him. "Good different, I hope?" "Time will tell," I said. When I hung up, I stared at the key again. It glinted in the light, daring me. I slipped it into my pocket. Because some doors aren't meant to stay locked, especially when the truth is waiting on the other side. The address on that key didn't come from magic. It came from one of her work receipts that didn't belong anywhere near our life. An Uber drop-off to a neighborhood I'd never visited. When I saw it, everything aligned. The lies, the patterns, the absences. That was her other world. I went at dusk, not to confront, to confirm. The apartment complex sat behind a row of trees, brick faded, balconies half-lit. I parked across the street, the key pressing cold against my palm. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady. The kind of calm that comes right before impact. I watched for a long time. Lights flickered in the third-floor window. Curtains drawn, but not enough. I saw movement, silhouettes crossing each other. One tall, one familiar. Her laugh slipped through the half-open window. Soft, unguarded. It was the same laugh that used to end my bad days. Now it made my hands shake. I stepped out of the car. The rain had started again, fine and constant, washing the air clean but leaving me dirty inside. I crossed the street, every step silent, deliberate. The entrance light hummed above me as I slid the key into the lock. It turned easily. Too easily. The hallway smelled like detergent and cooked rice. Ordinary. I walked up, slow, rehearsed. The way you approach a dream you already know will end badly. Her door was half open, the kind of careless detail you only leave when you believe you're safe. Inside, the television glowed. Two mugs sat on the table, steam rising. Shoes by the mat. His size, not mine. My shadow stretched long across the floor. And then I saw her. She was standing near the couch, phone in hand, barefoot, wearing the same blue shirt I'd once given her. The one she told me she only wore to sleep when she missed me? She froze. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Behind her, he stepped forward. The man from the photos, from the reflection in glass, from the margins of my life. For a heartbeat, none of us moved. Three people, one room, one impossible truth hanging in the air like smoke. He spoke first. "Who are you?" I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "That's what I've been asking." She reached for me, her voice trembling. "Please, let's talk outside." "No," I said. "We'll talk right here. In your home." The word home cracked something in her face. She looked at the floor, ashamed, or pretending to be. I couldn't tell anymore. The stranger stepped closer, confusion turning to anger. "You can't just walk in here." I turned to him, calm. "You wear a ring. So do I. Tell me, who did she marry first?" He glanced at her, and that glance told me everything I needed. I didn't yell. I didn't swing. I just stood there and watched her drown in her own silence. Because sometimes, the loudest punishment is letting someone hear the echo of what they've done. She tried to speak. Explanations, maybe. Excuses. But I lifted a hand. "Don't," I said quietly. "I've been listening long enough." The man backed away, muttering, reaching for his phone, maybe to call the police. I didn't care. My job here was finished. I stepped closer to her, just enough that she could see what I'd become. Not the man she'd lied to, but the one her lies had created. "Do you love him?" I asked. She hesitated, tears forming. "It's not that simple." "It is," I said. "You chose him. Just make sure you remember who chose to watch." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" I leaned in, my voice a whisper meant only for her. "You think you're safe here, but every story leaves fingerprints." Then I walked out. The rain hit my face like applause when I stepped outside. Cold, relentless, cleansing. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The image of her standing there, small and broken under the weight of her own fiction, would be enough to last a lifetime. Back in the car, I sat in silence. My hands trembled slightly as I placed the key on the dashboard. The metal glimmered under the streetlight. The symbol of access, of knowing. I could have thrown it away. Instead, I kept it. A reminder that truth, once found, doesn't return quietly to the dark. I drove until the city thinned out, until the lights behind me blurred into streaks of gold and red. The windshield wipers kept time with my heartbeat. Slow, methodical, final. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not closure, just equilibrium. She had her home. I had my evidence. And the stranger wearing my name? He'd learn soon enough that love built on a lie doesn't last, because sooner or later, truth always finds a way in, even if it has to use the spare key. The first time I followed her home, his home, I told myself it was just to see, not to act. But the mind has a way of lying to itself when revenge feels like clarity. I wasn't hunting her, I told myself. I was hunting the truth. But there's a thin line between witness and ghost. And by then, I'd already crossed it. The road to his neighborhood was lined with tall trees that leaned inward like they were keeping secrets. The houses were almost identical. Neat fences, trimmed lawns, cars parked just so. Everything about it screamed normal. And that normalcy made my stomach turn. She didn't belong in a world this calm. She had chaos in her veins. I should have known she'd build a second life where peace was the lie. I parked across the street, engine off, lights dimmed. Her laughter reached me before I even saw her. It was faint but unmistakable. The same sound that once lived in our kitchen, the sound that used to mean love. Now it meant something else entirely. She stepped out of his car, the one I'd seen before, the silver sedan, with that small dent near the door. The rain from earlier had dried, leaving the air heavy and still. She was smiling, keys in hand, head tilted as he said something I couldn't hear. Then she laughed again, that same tilt of the chin, that soft closing of the eyes. My laughter, recycled. My world, repurposed. I felt something inside me harden. It wasn't rage. Rage burns hot. But this was cold, steady, surgical. The kind of feeling that doesn't shake your hands. It steadies them. She leaned in and kissed him. Just a brief, familiar kiss. And in that moment, something clicked in me. Not pain, not heartbreak, but the quiet realization that I was watching the death of my old life and the birth of something far more dangerous. I watched until their lights went out. The window on the left glowed faintly for a while, her silhouette moving past it once, twice, before darkness swallowed the house whole. Inside my car, the silence was absolute. Even my heartbeat seemed muted. I opened my notebook, the one filled with times, dates, fragments of their world, and wrote a single line at the bottom of the page. Ghosts don't forgive. They document. I sat there until the street emptied, headlights fading one by one. Midnight crept in slow, wrapping the neighborhood in that eerie stillness that feels more alive than silence should. I could almost imagine her inside, asleep in someone else's arms, dreaming in a life that wasn't meant to be hers. That thought should have destroyed me. Instead, it focused me, because ghosts don't just watch, they wait. And I was done waiting. Part 2, 850 words. I didn't follow her the next night. I wanted her to think the world had gone quiet again, that whatever uneasy feeling she might have had was nothing more than a passing chill. Let her rest. Let her lower her guard. Instead, I planned. I scrolled through the photos I'd taken, her face illuminated by passing headlights, her hand brushing his arm, her keys glinting under the porch light. Frame by frame, I studied them, not with obsession, but with precision. Every detail was evidence, proof of her rewrite. By midnight, I had what I needed. One perfect photo. Her face turned slightly toward him, his hand reaching for hers, clear enough to know what was happening, but vague enough to haunt. It was intimate, not obscene. True, but incomplete, the kind of truth that drives people insane. I uploaded it to a burner phone, one I'd bought days ago and never used. Then, slowly, carefully, I sent it. No name, no words, no threats, just a photo. And I sent it from an untraceable number, one that would vanish after the message was delivered. When the message finally went through, I stared at the screen, waiting, watching, anticipating. The little sent icon felt heavier than any bullet, because that was all it took, one image, to unbalance the fragile lie she'd built. I walked for a few minutes. Nothing happened. Then, through the binoculars, I saw the glow of a phone light through her window. Movement. Her silhouette froze. Then another light flicked on. A man's shape passed behind her. The argument was silent from where I sat, but I could see the rhythm of it. The gestures, the pacing, the way she covered her mouth, then her eyes. I didn't smile. I didn't move. That's the thing about revenge. It's not about satisfaction. It's about silence. I sat there for hours, long after the lights went out again. My coffee turned cold in the cup holder. My reflection in the windshield stared back at me. Not angry, not triumphant, just hollow. But behind that hollowness, there was something else. Calm. She knew now. She knew she was being watched. And for the first time, I wasn't the one afraid. The next morning, I woke early. if I slept at all. The world looked sharper, cleaner, crueler. My phone buzzed twice, missed calls. Her number. Then a message. Who are you? That was all it said. No punctuation, just panic wrapped in a whisper. I stared at the words until my reflection blurred in the screen. I didn't reply. Ghosts don't text back. The rest of the day passed in fragments. I imagined her mind unraveling, the paranoia setting in, the whispers between her and him, the shifting blame. Maybe he accused her of something. Maybe she told him the truth. Maybe she finally understood what it feels like to live in the shadows, waiting for the next hit of fear. That night, I went back. Not close enough to be seen, just near enough to watch. The curtains were drawn tight this time. The porch light left on. The difference was small but telling. She was afraid now. Every creak of the floor, every car that slowed outside would remind her of the eyes she couldn't see. And that's the punishment, isn't it? Not exposure, but the waiting for it. I sat there, engine off, the city's faint hum filling the air. I thought about the first night we met. The way she'd said my name like it meant something sacred. I thought about our first apartment, the cracked paint, the laughter that filled the emptiness. It all felt like someone else's life now. The man she used to love had died quietly in that lobby when the receptionist said, her husband just picked her up. What sat behind the wheel now wasn't that man. It was what came after. I whispered it out loud, just once to remind myself. You did this, then I drove away, slow, silent, certain, because revenge isn't a scream. It's a whisper that waits in the dark. And now she'd hear it every night. The sound of her own door creaking. The ghost that still knew her name. The confrontation didn't happen like I imagined. It wasn't cinematic. It was surgical, precise, quiet, inevitable. There was no thunder, no shouting, no audience. Just three people standing in a hallway full of light that suddenly felt too white, too sterile, too cruel. I waited outside her office, the same place where I'd first heard the lie, where the receptionist had said her husband just picked her up. That memory still echoed in the marble floors. This time, though, I wasn't holding flowers. I was holding the truth. I saw them before they saw me. She walked beside him, smiling. That polite, professional smile she used for everyone but me. He carried her bag, protective, familiar. They looked like a couple carved from habit. Then her eyes met mine. Everything in her froze. The color drained from her face so fast it was like watching a portrait wash itself clean. She stopped mid-step, her hand tightening around his arm. He followed her gaze and saw me, just a man waiting in the lobby, calm, composed, out of place, but not dangerous. Yet, she whispered my name, softly, like a prayer, or maybe a curse. I smiled, calm, controlled. You must be the man she married. It was strange how quiet the world got in that moment. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint click of a shoe down the hall, the static buzz in my ears that only comes when everything you imagined finally collides with reality. He looked confused, then cautious. His arm shifted slightly, instinctively pulling her closer, as if he sensed what she was but couldn't name it yet. Her hand reached for me, trembling. Please, she whispered. Not here. But that was exactly why it had to be here. The place where the lie began deserved the truth. I'm not here for answers, I said softly, my voice steady. Just to introduce myself, husband to husband. The words landed like a slow punch. He turned to her, confusion turning into recognition, recognition into horror. The silence between them thickened, electric. She tried to speak, half-formed words spilling out like broken glass. It's not... You don't understand. He stepped back. What is he talking about? Her lips trembled. Please, can we go somewhere private? But I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't give her the grace of privacy. She'd taken that from me long ago. Truth doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just arrives, and everything it touches starts to burn. He was staring at me now, studying me like a reflection he didn't want to recognize. Maybe he saw something of himself in me. The same exhaustion in the eyes, the same ring on the hand, the same disbelief tightening his jaw. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. I almost laughed. "That depends," I said. "Who do you think she is?" She stepped between us then, shaking, trying to control the narrative, still performing, even as the stage collapsed. "Please, both of you, stop. It's not what it looks like." I looked her dead in the eyes. "That line's getting old, don't you think?" The sound that left her throat wasn't a sob. It was a gasp, raw and desperate. I could almost feel her panic leaking through the cracks of her voice. He looked at her, betrayed, angry, lost. "Is he serious? What is he saying?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her silence was the only honest thing she'd given either of us. I took a step closer. "You lied to both of us. Built 2 homes, 2 stories, 2 lives. But you can't live in both forever." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't," I said, cutting her off. "Lies never mean to hurt people. They just do." He turned away, pacing, hands in his hair, the weight of it all hitting him in waves. I watched him crumble the way I once did. Slow, quiet, invisible to the rest of the world. And for a moment, I pitied him. Because he didn't know that heartbreak isn't an explosion. It's erosion. It wears you down piece by piece, until one day you wake up and realize there's nothing left to rebuild. She looked at me then. Really looked. "Why are you doing this?" I smiled faintly. "Because you taught me how." Her tears finally fell. I should have felt something. Triumph, satisfaction, justice. But all I felt was distance, as if I was watching someone else's life dissolve through a window I couldn't break. He faced her again. "How long?" he asked. His voice was low, trembling. She couldn't meet his eyes. "A year." The word broke something in him. He stepped back, shaking his head. And then he laughed. That awful kind of laugh that sounds more like pain disguised as disbelief. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My job wasn't to destroy her, just to reveal her. She reached for me again, whispering, "Please stop." I looked down at her hand, the same hand that once wore my ring, the same hand that now trembled for mercy. "Stop?" I said. "You stopped being mine long before I started watching." Her eyes widened. "You were watching?" I nodded. "Every night. Every lie. Every time you thought no one saw you." The air went still. Even he froze. Her voice broke. You sent that photo?" "Yes." Her breath caught. He turned to me. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm honest about it." Then I turned to her. "And honesty was always your weakness." She sank onto the nearest chair, covering her face. The receptionist glanced from a distance, uneasy, unsure if this was a scene or a crisis. Maybe it was both. He stood by the window, shoulders tense, every muscle locked between fury and disbelief. I took one last look at her, the woman I once built a life around, and realized something tragic. I didn't hate her anymore. She wasn't worth hating. Hate requires passion, and mine had long since burned out. What remained was colder, quieter, the kind of clarity that comes only after everything else is gone. "You should both know," I said, "I didn't come here to ruin you. You did that yourselves. I just wanted to see the moment truth finally showed up." She looked up, her mascara smudged, her voice barely a whisper. "And now that you have," I paused, "now I can stop looking for you in every lie I hear." For a long moment, no one spoke. The hallway seemed to hum with the aftermath. that electric silence that follows a lightning strike. I turned to leave. As I walked past the receptionist's desk, I could feel their eyes on me. Hers pleading, his burning. But I didn't look back, because ghosts don't belong in daylight. Outside, the wind had picked up. The air felt heavier, carrying the faint echo of her voice, the same voice that once said my name like a promise. I lit a cigarette I didn't want, just to have something to hold. The smoke curled upward, fragile and temporary, like everything we ever were. I thought of her inside that office. Two men standing in the ruins of her fiction. Both of us mirrors reflecting everything she'd tried to hide. She would spend months, maybe years, trying to rebuild what I'd burned with a single conversation. But the truth isn't something you can bury. It lingers, it stains, it waits. And maybe, in time, they'd both realize something I already had. That when love dies, it doesn't disappear. It haunts. I took one last drag, exhaled, and whispered into the wind, "Rest easy. You're finally seen." Then I walked away, slow, certain, unhurried. Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about witness, and I'd seen enough. She left both of us. No goodbyes, no apologies, just silence and a note I never opened. It sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days, untouched, her handwriting small and careful, as if even her farewell was afraid to make noise. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please understand." The usual vocabulary of cowards. Words meant to patch a wound after the knife's already rusted inside you. The house feels bigger now. Too big! The air doesn't carry her perfume anymore, just dust and distance. The couch where she used to curl up after work is cold. The floorboards creak like they're whispering her absence. Even the silence feels personal, like it's learning to live without her too. I should feel free. I don't. Freedom isn't peace. It's aftermath. People say time heals, but they never tell you about the scar tissue. How it stretches, how it itches, how it reminds you that something was once cut open. I walk through the house like a man haunting his own life. Each room a monument to something that no longer exists. I still see her face sometimes, reflected in the microwave door or the window glass at night, a ghost made of memory and regret. She doesn't speak, but her eyes always ask the same question. Was it worth it? I never answer her. Maybe because I don't know. Maybe because I do. I kept the photo, the one I sent her, the one that started it all. Not out of cruelty, but proof. Proof that it happened, that I wasn't imagining the fracture. Proof that love can break so quietly, it almost sounds like truth. It sits in my drawer now, folded, worn at the edges. Sometimes I take it out just to remember how fragile everything once was. The image itself isn't much. Two people smiling under cheap yellow light, unaware that a single click had turned them into evidence. That picture ended more than her secret. It ended me too. Or at least the version of me that believed in gentle things. Now I sleep less. Think more. I drive past her workplace sometimes, not to see her, but to see the place where truth began. The glass doors, the security guard, the lobby light, they all look the same, untouched by what happened inside me. The world moves forward, indifferent. I sit in my car for a few minutes, engine running, letting the hum fill the silence that she left behind. Sometimes I imagine her walking out again, laughing, holding her bag, her life neatly packed and unbroken. Sometimes I imagine she looks across the street and sees me, still there, still waiting for a version of her that never existed. But she never does. The truth is, I'm not waiting for her. I'm waiting for the part of myself that left with her, the part that still believed love was immune to rot. And maybe that's my curse, or my clarity, Because love doesn't die when the person leaves. It dies when the illusion does. And illusions, I've learned, have long lives. Morning light hits different now. It used to spill across the room in warm gold. Now it feels colder, sharper, like it's cutting through the air just to reach me. I make coffee the same way she used to. 2 sugars, no milk. Even though I hate it that way. Some habits refuse to die, even when the people do. The phone rings less. Friends still call sometimes, though they don't know what to say anymore. They think I've gone bitter. Maybe I have, but bitterness, I think, is just love's ghost. The part that refuses to die, even after you've buried it. Sometimes they tell me I should start over. You deserve peace, they say. I nod, pretending to agree. But peace is just another word for forgetting. And I've never been good at that. I don't want peace. I want to remember, because remembering means she existed. And if she existed, then so did I. I've started talking to the house again. Not out loud, not crazy. Just quietly, in my head. The walls know me better than anyone now. They were there for everything. The laughter, the betrayal, the silence after truth arrived. They hold it all. The way her voice bounced off the tile. The way she said, "You're overthinking it." The way I stopped believing her. It's strange how memory works. It doesn't fade. It rewrites. I used to remember her as soft, kind, untouchable. Now I see her as human, flawed, frightened, greedy for love she didn't know how to hold. And maybe that's the real punishment. Not losing her, but understanding her too late. Last week, I passed the apartment where she used to meet him. The curtains were drawn, but the mailbox still had her initials scratched faintly on the metal. I stopped, traced my finger over the letters. For a second I felt nothing, and then I smiled. Not out of joy, but out of acceptance. The past doesn't vanish. It just changes address. I drove home that night without turning on the radio. The road was empty, the world still. For once, I didn't feel like chasing the noise. Because quiet, I've learned, isn't emptiness. It's clarity. When I got home, I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. The lines on my face were deeper, the eyes different. But there was something steadier there too. Something honest. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see a fool. I saw a man who'd been burned clean. Love had turned me into a witness. Betrayal had turned me into a writer. And maybe that's how healing happens, not in the forgetting, but in the retelling. It's been months now, and the house has settled into its silence. No new noises, no ghosts left to chase. Sometimes I catch myself expecting her footsteps, her voice calling from the next room. Old instincts, stubborn things, but mostly I'm fine, not happy, just fine. And maybe that's enough. I've learned something about endings. They don't come like storms. They come like seasons, slowly, invisibly, until one day you wake up and realize you've been living in a new world for a while now. I think that's what this is. A new world built on ashes. There's peace in that, but also something colder. A kind of moral clarity that feels like standing alone in winter. I used to think love was fire. Now I know it's smoke. It lingers long after the flame's gone. Some nights I replay everything. The surprise, the lies, the reveal. I think about how one small decision, one curiosity, one visit to her workplace set this entire story in motion. And then I wonder, if I hadn't gone that day, would I still be happy? Still blind? Maybe ignorance really was love's last mercy. But I wasn't built for mercy. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a man who understands the cost of truth. I see the price of knowing, and I wear it proudly, because truth doesn't free you. It transforms you, and maybe that's the moral of it all. Some surprises aren't gifts. They're awakenings, the kind that break you open so completely that the only way forward is through. So if you ask me what I feel for her now, I'll tell you the truth. Nothing. Not love, not hate, not regret, just understanding. And in a world built on lies, understanding feels like the closest thing to revenge.